softly. They'd been around each other many times without getting physical. Plus, she didn't mind. She just wanted him to know what would happen afterward. He started to remove his clothes. He knew how much she hated street clothes in bed. As he removed his black Armani jacket, he felt her behind him, helping him with it. He watched her grab a hanger while he removed his tie and she unbuttoned his shirt for him. He watched her carefully as she removed pieces of clothing and hung them up. He pictured her as a wife, his wife. Nova was enjoying this time with him, but her heart was cold. She'd already gotten over the shock of seeing him, and was emotionally detached. She knew if she didn't care, then she couldn't get hurt. She turned around after hanging the last of his clothes on the hook behind the door, and she had to admire his toned body in all of its glory. The only thing he was wearing was a pair of boxer briefs. He was still domineering and picked her side of the bed to sleep on and wouldn't move. Nova rolled her eyes and climbed into the bed. He wrapped his arm around her and pulled her close, as he grabbed the remote and flipped on the TV. His body was warm and Nova was tired from all the excitement of the day. She let him hold her while he flipped through the channels, and a few minutes later could hear her breathing change. He kissed her forehead and then the tip of her nose. She was so gorgeous to him, he wanted to freeze time and just be in the moment forever. As he had the thought, something else came to mind. He gently lifted her so as not to rouse her, and went to get his phone. He was okay with them not being intimate tonight. He just wanted to be with her. As he snapped pictures of her, he admired each one. But before he could completely bask in the moment, he saw the text banner on his screen. He groaned at Leah's message. He wasn't going to allow anyone to ruin this. He put his phone on Do Not Disturb and climbed back into bed with his sleeping beauty. He could deal with the drama tomorrow. The sound of a shower running roused Gorgeous from her sleep. She blinked her eyes, trying to adjust to the darkness of the room. She picked her phone up from the nightstand and peeked at the time. Ugh, she groaned. Then she remembered the events of the night and why she had a slight headache. Nova wasn't a drinker, and although she only had maybe 2 drinks, she was paying for it. She could hear a phone buzzing on the other nightstand, the one on the other side of the bed. It wasn't her phone, and since it was almost 3 in the morning, she figured whoever it was trying to reach Amir must have a good reason for calling at that hour. She reached over to grab the phone, and as she got up, it started buzzing again. The name on the screen read Leah, and the message said, "Who's the pretty bitch you were with?" along with an image attachment. Nova's brow furrowed at this, although she didn't look at the image. She took a deep breath and headed towards the bathroom and knocked on the door. She said softly, "Amir, your phone keeps going off. Someone is really trying to reach you." She spoke with an even tone. The screen said, Leah?" she said, playing dumb. Although she didn't know who this Leah was, she knew this woman knew about her. This made Gorgeous uncomfortable. She was used to being the one watching, getting the drop on others, and noticing tails. She wasn't scared, just irritated. Irritated that she'd been in Atlanta all of one day, and someone had been watching her. Now she was going to have to find out who this chick was. She was going to have to do a full workup on her, where she lived, worked, her hobbies, family members, and even details about her and Amir. Amir stepped into the bedroom of the suite with only a towel wrapped around his waist. His sexy abs were on full display and Gorgeous couldn't help herself. He had the body of a 20-something athlete. He took the phone from her hand. However, once Gorgeous mentioned Leah, Amir let out a heavy sigh and threw his phone down. He didn't want anything spoiling this moment with her, especially Leah. He'd deal with her later. She noticed his disposition and decided to see if he'd keep it real with her, so she asked innocently, "So Leah, huh? Is that your girl?" Her tone was friendly and indifferent, but Amir knew she was fishing. He looked at her beautiful face and knew she had seen more than just the name of the caller. He decided they could discuss everything that could possibly be an issue between them later. He answered in his deep voice, "Right now, she's no one. And more importantly, no one I want to talk about when we could discuss more important matters." He smiled and licked his lips as he said, "I want to talk you onto the bed and make up for lost time. But I want more than one night." He leaned down and whispered close to her ear, "So I'll be good, but don't think I'll let you off so easily next time," he stated arrogantly. Gorgeous felt her resolve weakening. His cockiness was sexy as hell, but she wasn't going to break her rules, not even for him. She was still locked in his strong embrace. His natural scent invaded her senses, and she couldn't help herself from running her small hands down his chest before wrapping her arms around his neck. He pulled her in even tighter. There was no room between them, and she was so close to him that she could feel his breath. Her eyes closed in anticipation. He leaned in to plant the sweetest kiss on her full lips. Then all of a sudden, Nova tensed up, and her eyes popped open. She thought, "Oh my God, I probably have morning breath." She quickly pulled herself from his embrace and walked quickly to the bathroom to brush her teeth and rinse her mouth with mouthwash. She checked herself in the mirror. She had a cute, messy look. Once satisfied, she opened the door and strutted back into the bedroom. Amir had already gotten halfway dressed with his slacks and button-up already on. She was torn. Part of her wanted him to stay, and part of her knew he should go. She said softly, "You're leaving already?" He sat down on the couch in the bedroom and placed his shoes on the floor. He looked at her with a sexy smile and said, "Come here." His tone made the command hypnotizing. She didn't protest or take her time. Who the hell does he think he is? She thought. If he was anyone else, he'd be getting put out. Come on, G. Get it together, girl, she thought to herself as she approached him. The natural sway of her hips was enticing and mesmerizing. She stood directly in front of him as he sat, and his head was leveled at her chest. He pulled her between his legs and hugged her tightly, taking in her sweet scent. He pulled her down onto his lap and they locked eyes for a moment. They both knew that they would always be important to each other. They recognized that even though it had been 10 years of distance, they also had a special bond. The only difference was Amir wanted her. He wanted to work out all of their problems and make a life together. While Nova was willing to have the hard discussions and reminisce, she wasn't thinking about a relationship or marriage. He said sincerely in his deep, sexy voice, "Thank you for a wonderful evening, Gorgeous. I really appreciate this time with you, and I hope we can have more time together." He caressed her cheek and kissed her. It was a sweet, intimate kiss, similar to their first kiss all those years ago. He held her in his lap as he said, "Yes, I have to leave. If I don't leave now, you won't be leaving at all. Plus, I don't have a change of clothes, and Ahmad and I have a meeting in a few hours." Nova smiled and nodded her head in understanding. "Speaking of Ahmad, Aliyah didn't call me after their dinner. I'll have to check in with her and see how their night went," she said with a smile and gossipy tone. Amir chuckled and shook his head. He said with a laugh, "Can we focus on us before you jump into their business?" He tapped her lightly, signaling her to get up. He put on his shoes and grabbed his suit jacket. He looked good. Even though his shirt was not tucked in, his shirt was open a little and no tie. He looked amazing. Nova decided to see him out before things got heavy. She started towards the door to walk him out. As she entered the living room of the suite, he grabbed her hand and held it until they reached the door. She bit her lip shyly and said sweetly, "I enjoyed spending time with you as well. We have a lot to discuss and iron out before we can even consider moving forward, Amir." He kissed the palm of her hand and held it. He looked into her eyes and said, "We will make the time to have that discussion while you're here. Can I call you later?" he asked. She laughed because he didn't ask permission. She thought it was adorable. With a dazzling smile, she said, "Of course you can." As she opened the door, they both paused and had one more kiss. This kiss was passionate. She was sure he could feel her heart beating. With her arms around his neck, she couldn't help rubbing every inch of him she could touch. He had his arms locked around her waist and didn't know where she began and he ended. He wanted to say F that meeting and pick her up and return to bed. But he knew he couldn't have her that night. The anticipation would make their lovemaking that much better. They broke their intimate kiss and neither wanted to let go. Finally, Amir whispered with his forehead to hers, "I'm going to make you mine." With that, he released her and walked away. They would be thinking of each other for the rest of what was left of their night. As Nova headed back to bed, she thought, "Now where is Goddess?" After Amir and Gorgeous left the restaurant, Aliyah and Ahmad stayed and enjoyed each other's company over dinner. There was no denying the chemistry between them. Aliyah and Nova had very different views on relationships. Gorgeous believed being in love was a weakness. She was cold, and although she was usually respectful and polite, she didn't give a damn about a man's feelings. She used them like toys, and when she was done playing with them, she'd put them away until she wanted to deal with them. Aliyah, on the other hand, wanted a family, a husband and kids with a cute dog and a nice home. She was a romantic at heart. One thing Aliyah loved about Nova, even though she didn't want that fairy tale relationship stuff, she was always supportive and happy for those who had it. Nova knew Aliyah and knew that she wanted more. She also knew Ahmad, and he'd been crushing on Goddess for a while. After having dinner, Aliyah realized that she was getting a bit distracted. She was there for business and had something she needed to do before morning. Ahmad was really enjoying his time with Aliyah. He'd been checking for her for a while, and that's why he had no objections when Gorgeous and Amir made their exit. He was hoping they could spend a little more time together after dinner. But Aliyah had other plans. She really liked Ahmad. She thought, what's there not to like? He's handsome, successful, and a gentleman. Although she wanted nothing more than to continue their evening, she had work to do. Aliyah sweetly said, "Thank you, Ahmad, for such a wonderful evening, and also making sure we were set up." She was referring to the hotel and cars. Ahmad looked at her beautiful face, and then into her beautiful gray eyes, and said with a smile, "Anything for you, Goddess. I'd love to spend a little more time with you. Maybe drive you around and give you a mini tour of the city." As he was asking, she was already getting up from her seat. Ahmad's voice was deep, and his tone was sincere and calm when he said, "Damn, you are so beautiful." She was taken aback a little by his straightforwardness, although they'd been teasing and flirting throughout dinner. He was a real gentleman. He wasn't too aggressive and made sure she was comfortable, only if he knew she had no objections to his advances. She couldn't help but blush at his compliment. Ahmad was not only good-looking, but he was also a good man. She thought he might be too good for her. Ahmad rose up from his seat, grabbed his wallet, and placed 2 large bills on the table. His voice was smooth as he jokingly scolded her. "I'm supposed to get up from the table first. So, I can hold the chair for my lady to get up from her seat." Aliyah laughed. It seemed he was staking a claim. She leaned into him and whispered sexily, "You're right, babe. It's just, I need to get some work done tonight. And if I don't leave, we won't have much to look forward to later." She took a step back and smiled slyly. Ahmad knew exactly what she meant, because he was feeling the same way. He chuckled as he said, "Let's go. I have a meeting